All right, and our next speaker is Shujat. He is coming to us from NYU. He is defending next month, which is exciting because that means he's on the job market if anyone here is hiring. And he's going to be talking to us today about a media analysis of how privacy is really kind of reported and discussed across the globe. So we'll get to see an even more broad perspective across how we look at privacy and how we report on privacy, presumably very, very soon. There we go.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Shujat Mirza, and today we'll be talking about Media Talks Privacy. This work was in collaboration with my colleagues Corbin Villa and Christina Papper. Privacy concerns have taken the center stage in media reporting worldwide. From the revelations of Edward Snowden to Cambridge Analytica scandal, the ongoing debates of privacy policies, all these things highlight that there is quite some significance and importance given to privacy in mainstream media. The media plays a dual role when it comes to privacy issues. Firstly, it acts as a mirror of public sentiment. Basically, it reflects the current concerns and acts as a proxy for public opinion. Secondly, it acts as a shaper of public sentiment as well. It influences the public agenda and drives legislative action. Understanding this dual role is crucial as it helps us see how media coverage can both reflect and influence societal attitudes towards privacy. So today we will examine the role of media in shaping privacy discourse across different regions for the past decade, highlighting the key trends, themes, and sentiments involved in this discourse. Our study involved several key steps, started with curating a data set of articles that was representative for this study, and then we move on to performing time series analysis for temporal trends, identifying the key themes in this discourse, as well as the sentiments and tones present. Starting out with the dataset curation, we wanted the dataset to be representative of the worldwide view, for which we needed to source our newspapers from different rankings and making sure it was available in our dataset from LexisNexis. We then performed, given the multilingual analysis of this dataset, we had to translate these into English, and we performed the evaluation and validation of machine translation using a separate study on prolific using tasks such as post-editing tasks, as well as trying to see how it performs on downstream tasks such as sentiment analysis and so on. In order to weed out the false positives, we utilized automated methods such as BERT encoder as well as LLM classifiers to filter out non-privacy articles from this corpus of overall privacy articles. This resulted us in narrowing down the articles to roughly 35,000 articles, which came from 36 newspapers across 25 countries. These were balanced across 6 regions, and there were 6 languages that were originally represented in this dataset. Having put out this effort, now I will try to present some of the insights that we derived from here. The figure depicts a consistent and steady increase in the media coverage of privacy issues over the whole past decade. This trend was observed and verified using statistical significance tests as well. And there are several key events that have dramatically influenced the public perception and discourse over this time frame. Earlier in 2010, Google's Street View scandal had drawn attention to potential misuse of geolocation data, but the main highlight of the last decade was 2013, which brought privacy to the main limestream, where the surveillance disclosures by Edward Snowden awakened a heightened global consciousness of privacy rights and government oversight. Later on in 2018, Cambridge Analytica scandal came, and then this attention shifted from solely being on government surveillance to the data management practices of big tech. And lastly, more recently, during the public health crisis of COVID-19, we observed a lot of discourse that happened around the COVID-19 contact tracing applications. Trying to understand the differences between global north and global south, we found out that Global North had steady coverage of privacy-related issues throughout this time frame, whereas the Global South experienced a statistically significant increase in the coverage of these issues. Not all privacy events led to global spikes. In fact, if you are zooming on into the legislative milestones, we've identified that the 2014's popular right to be forgotten ruling, and as well as EU's GDPR, was quite prominent in the Global North coverage, whereas more recently India's DPDP data protection bill, as well as WhatsApp policy changes, were more represented in the Global South's coverage. Moving on from the temporal trends and trying to identify the different key themes that exist there, we manually inspected and categorized topics that were generated by LDA into 12 broad themes. And these dominant key themes of the discourse range from more obvious ones like government surveillance and data breaches to court rulings, as well as nuanced ones such as online abuse, corporate responsibility, and consumer tracking. We wanted to examine the temporal trends in the topic popularity, which are represented in this plot with each distinct color representing a different topic, and the size of the colored region represents their relative contribution to the cumulative privacy discourse. Some of the trends of interest are that there is consistent media attention that is given to the topic of online abuse, which is highlighted as light brown at the bottom corner of this plot. And some of the sub-themes within this broader issue of online abuse include use of digital spaces by children without adult supervision, intimate partner violence, revenge porn, cyberbullying, and so on. And then the discourse constantly engages with efforts to combat this digital abuse in a privacy-preserving manner. It's also interesting to observe the global government surveillance as highlighted in red earlier on back in 2013, which served as a catalyst for heightened public awareness of the topic, and then that shifted over time towards other actors such as big tech, as seen in this light blue region back in 2018 following the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And then there was a consistent focus on tracking and tracing as highlighted in green throughout this time frame. And some notable examples in there include COVID-19 contact tracing apps, as well as, for example, in specific regional context, let's say Toronto's Sidewalk Smart City project. Doing the comparative examination of temporal trends in topic popularity between the North and the South, we identified that there were some trends such as Snowden leaks, which were widely represented in both of these discourses, but there were some differences as well, such as back in 2017, as shown here in light green, there was some discourse about Indian Supreme Court's decision to declare privacy as a fundamental right, which was covered way more coverage in Global South than Global North. In general, the Global North focused more on topics of data privacy breaches as well as scandals, whereas the South focused more on consumer tracking and tracing, as well as the power that is held by the big tech and other players. Moving on to the sentiment, we analyzed and identified that there was a dominant negative sentiment that was present in these discussions that happened around privacy, which again goes on to the prevailing apprehension and concern that exist within these matters. And then that said, even for all the different articles that had dominant negative theme, there was for sure positivity that also was depicted in the handling of those issues, which probably goes on to the editorial selection of these newspapers. Trying to understand this and breaking it down per topic, we identified that online abuse and data breach scandals reveal consistent negative sentiments, and government surveillance and legislation, the sentiment around those fluctuates based on different incidents. And then we identified that in terms of the emotional tones that are embedded in here, online abuse generally evokes the most disgust among the writers, and surveillance of any sort invoked most of the emotions of anger and fear. To conclude, I will try to refer here to some of the takeaways for different stakeholders, with one being that the Global South's activism and engagement challenges the traditional privacy narratives that exist there, which basically highlight the need for more inclusive and universally relevant privacy policies. In terms of the landscape of privacy concerns, those have evolved from government surveillance and data breaches to more personal matters such as CSAM and IPV, and then there is need to come up with solutions that can protect the individuals at risk while still upholding the privacy for all. In terms of corporate responsibility, recent significant incidents such as Apple's CSAM scanning reversal or WhatsApp's policy changes have demonstrated that the power of privacy advocates as well as end users in driving corporate change. And lastly, in terms of the negative sentiments that exist in this coverage, tech companies must enhance transparency, and regulators need to enforce stronger protections to make sure that this trust gap can be bridged and public confidence can be restored. With that, I will refer you all to look into the paper for detailed insights, and I will be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your talk. Are there any questions in the room? Or which questions are in the room? I think you all are getting tired. Okay. Oh, thank you. Can you go right there? Oh, no.
Just a quick one. How did you select which newspapers to choose? And did you use things like, popularity and stuff like that?
So yeah, we utilized a few different metrics. One was the ranking of the newspapers that we looked for. The second one was, of course, trying to do this representative collection of newspaper sources. We were limited by our data provider, which was LexisNexis API. So we had to make sure those newspapers were widely available throughout the time frame. There were some newspapers which were only available, let's say, for 2 or 3 year periods, and we were analyzing, let's say, this past decade. So we looked into of course, we were limited by the availability, but then we looked into the rankings as well as their how much adoption of those newspapers was in terms of circulation and so on. And lastly, we also focused on, for each of the regions, we included one financial focused newspaper. So 5 of the newspapers per region were general focused, but then we also included one financial one to make sure that we can get slightly more coverage than these normal ones.
Hi, thank you so much. it looks like the database is can be really useful in many projects. I was wondering, in terms of intellectual property, which is often a problem when you're working with such sources of data, what this state of your database was, whether it could be open sourced at any time, how you work with it. Maybe if you can tell us anything about the costs, if it is something anyone who would like to replicate that would need to pay. Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. So we utilized the LexisNexis with whom our university at NYU the library had a contract with them. So they put us in contact with them and made sure that we had access reasonable rate limits on the API so that we could create this big data set. We were in talks with the LexisNexis to see if we can somehow release some identifiers of these articles such that anyone else can take it up from there onwards, so they don't have to replicate the whole process of going through, let's say, removal of the false positives and so on. We are hitting some issues with them, but we are hoping that at some point in future we can resolve them, so at least we can either release the identifiers so anyone can just utilize the same API access with their own keys and then get the access, or maybe if they allow us to release some generated content. For example, we used LLMs for generating summaries of those different articles and so on. So maybe such aggregated statistics or derived data might be okay with them, but that's an ongoing process, that discussion that we're having with them right now.
All right, let's thank the speaker one last time.